Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Nazareth's iconic 1975 album, Hair of the Dog, cemented their legacy in the rock annals. The album became a commercial breakthrough, propelled by the timeless hit singles Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts. The album's impact on hard rock and heavy metal influenced bands like Guns N' Roses and Twisted Sister, as well as popularising the power ballad. The album's no-nonsense production and gritty raw energy secured its place as one of the 70s best rock albums. Joining me to discuss this album is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, man?
Doing great, man, and you?
Good, yeah, very well, thank you, very well. I just want to crack on straight away with this album because you chose it and I've really enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I'll tell you my quick initial thoughts first. I listened to it once and I was kind of like, okay, this is good. It's sort of your middle of the road 70s rock, kind of not quite as good as Deep Purple, not quite as good as Led Zeppelin. And then after I listened to it again, I was like, oh, that song's got a cool little bit in there. Oh, that song's got a really cool set. And as I went on and on, I must have listened to it 6 times over the last few days. And every time I listened to it, something else stood out. And you're like, oh, hold on, like I get it now. So yeah, man, really, really enjoyed it. So I mean, just crack on. Let's actually, do you know, I'll do the album info first.
Yes.
The name obviously is Hair of the Dog by the band Nazareth, who are from Scotland. Released 3rd of April 1975, recorded at the Escape Studios in Kent and finished off at the AIR Studios in London. The genre, we'll talk about this, could be considered hard rock, heavy metal or blues rock. It's 40 minutes long, released on the Mooncrest label and was produced by Nazareth's guitarist Manny Charlton. So, let's get going. Felipe, I want to know why you chose this album, man.
Well, so Nazareth is a big part of my childhood, really.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so my dad is a big fan, like huge fan. So it's probably his favorite band. So when I got into music, he started introducing me to the bands he loved. So he gave me a Creedence CD and gave me a Pink Floyd CD. And I think one of the first ones was Nazareth. I think it was the greatest hits kind of stuff. And then I got into Razamanaz, which is one of my favorite albums. Probably their best album in my opinion.
Okay.
So I really like that one. But I grew up listening to their songs, and it sometimes would be kind of a random thing. You pick one song from an album, and then when the whole internet thing started, you would go online and download a song or whatever that kind of
The internet thing.
The internet thing, you know.
Sorry, man. Yeah, please carry on.
I'm so non-technological, Napster and all that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Guilty of that for sure. So you would download the songs you liked and stuff like that. So I think I never associate the songs to specific albums. So I just said we need to talk about Nazareth at some point. They are so essential to the 70s and to British rock in the 70s. We need to talk about them, and why not doing the best-selling album?
Yeah.
And I think in the end of the day, so the random choice for me was like, I kind of like everything they've done, so let's go for the best-selling album. And when I listen to it, I say, wait a minute, this is not only an album that is good for the masses. It's an album that it's if you're a true Nazareth fan, or if you're proper rock fan, you just enjoy rock music, this album is great. And it's got all the elements of 70s rock in it, I believe,
as well as pushing the boundaries for what was to come in terms of heavy metal, hard rock, stuff like that.
Exactly.
I'd actually had 2 encounters with this album before, or not the album, but songs on this album. Encounter 1 was we did a covers versus original episode, and we did Love Hurts. Yeah. But the first encounter with this album was my dad had. It's funny, Nazareth are very much a dad rock band, aren't they? So it seems. My dad had a Best of Nazareth, and the one he always used to play me, and ironically it's not on the album as we're doing it, is My White Bicycle, which is just an amazing song. And I remember hearing, my dad would play me things like, I don't know, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, and it kind of sound normal. And then when White Bicycle starts, he's like, racing out in the street. And then I'm like, hold on, what's this? I didn't know you could... I know he probably wasn't doing it to be funny, but it sounded funny to a kid like me.
I was like, that song was intentional.
Was it intentional to be funny?
That song,
I was a kid. I can't put an age on. Maybe 7 or 8 years old, and I was thinking, hold on, I didn't know you could make music funny. I didn't know that it was okay to try and make it funny, because obviously all I heard was on the radio.
Yeah.
And obviously, in terms of humour and music, my God, from there it just went on.
Yeah.
Frank Zappa, Weird Al Yankovic, So,
Yeah.
plenty of room to for humour and music. But yeah, I mean, this your album choice, bro. So lead the discussion, man. Take us on.
Yeah. Let's start talking about how the production actually makes this album particularly different from the previous ones. Because basically, they had a couple of albums at the beginning, which, in my opinion, includes a little bit of prog rock and even maybe some folk, some different kind of genres in it.
Yeah, I read that the first two albums were sort of more folky, a bit soft rocky.
Yeah, there's a lot of acoustic stuff. There's a lot of folk, and I would even dare to say a little bit of prog, although the songs are not really long and that kind of stuff. And then they had 3 consecutive albums produced by Roger Glover from Deep Purple.
Yes, yeah.
So, which actually helped to create the Nazareth sound that we know nowadays. But then I guess after those albums, they said, wait a minute, now we found our sound. Let's take over and be in charge of this. And their guitar player was the one in charge of producing this one. So I think the different stuff in this album is the extra backing vocals, and there's even tabla on the song "Please Don't Judas Me," which is at the end of the album.
Yeah.
And I think it's played, as far as I could research, it was played by Simon Phillips, one of the best rock drummers of all time. That's what it says on the internet. So the internet again, that thing might be wrong, so there's a bit of tabla, which is Indian percussion. There is a lot of slide guitar. There's a talk box, so they're kind of playing around with effects and using all the resources at the time, and they have at least one really long song, which is the same one I just mentioned, Please Don't Judas Me. And Whiskey Drinking Woman is a song with a lot of blues elements, so that relates to the early Nazareth stuff. So there's a good mix of what they used to be and what they were about to become. And again, we always like picking albums that kind of take the band to another level, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this has become a commercial success for those reasons, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the production stood out because it just sounded so raw and energetic. Like I said in the opening, in the little thing I say at the start. And it just felt like a rock band performing a rock album. But when you mix those raw production methods with stuff that sounds like it's overproduced, i.e. the talkbox guitar. Do you know what I mean by that? I mean, the talkbox guitar is obviously not a guitar in a room just being strummed with nothing done to it. It's an effect. It's a pedal. So when you have that contradiction of raw and unpolished music, sounds like the rock and roll band, with polished stuff like the occasional keyboard, the vocals are produced really well, and then that talk box guitar, it creates this little oxymoronic thing where you're like, hold on, this sounds quite polished in elements, but overall it still sounds really rock and roll. And I think it has a very I don't know, do you know what, I might choose the word progressive. It has a bit of a progressive feel because of that, because you're listening there thinking this is a rock and roll album, but then hold on, why is this effect sounds very futuristic? And you're just kind of like, it doesn't sound normal, but it sounds right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's unusual, but not too much. So they kind of like they push on the boundaries to, I think, to a level that doesn't make them sound too weird in a certain way. So if you want that rock, like straightforward rock vibe, is somehow there for the whole album. Although you have those extra elements, like some female BVs in a couple of tracks that sound amazing.
They were incredible. They won the End of Guilty, I think.
Yes, End of Guilty and Please Don't Judas Me as well. Guilty is okay. So talking about that, so that song stands out, doesn't it, in terms of the style? Because that the other day I was learning a song for a gig. It's called Fool's Paradise by Sam Cooke. You can put that on the playlist, right?
Okay.
Hold
on, wait, little pause to tell everyone about the playlist.
Yeah.
For new listeners and new viewers, if you go down to the description in the show notes, you're going to see an episode playlist link. Now, what this does is it will take you to a Spotify playlist where we've put all the songs from the album we're talking about. Hair of the Dog, and then any other that we mention or that we think are relevant to the episode. So if we mention a song and, oh, this part, the guitar solo, you can pause us, go and play the song, have a listen, and then you know what we're talking about. Please carry on, man.
Yeah, so I was listening to that song, which is a soul ballad. It was recorded by a lot of different people, but Sam Cooke's version come to my mind. Have a listen if you. I know you listen to stuff as we're speaking, isn't it, Lars? So if you can find that one,
Sam Cooke.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a look.
So yeah, Fool's Paradise. So that's the song. And that sort of a soul ballad, right? It's something that you wouldn't expect to find in a rock album like that. There's a certain kind of rock ballad that people do, and that's not what they went for, isn't it? Can you relate those two songs? Can you think about that songs?
Fool's Paradise.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear completely what you mean. It has a.
It's like soul music. I think Guilty has that soul music vibe.
Well,
and it's in a rock album. Yeah,
I'm sure you're aware, but it's a cover. Of a Randy Newman song, and Randy Newman, most notably known for his work on the Toy Story movie, and I don't think maybe that's not fair to say most well known, but I think a lot of people would know him from that. He's kind of like a singer-songwriter, country artist. So we put the original version Guilty in the playlist, so check that out. But
I don't know the original, to be fair. So
I listened to them all today. This is what I wanted to say next. I've got a note here that I copy and pasted 3 times. Such an unusual choice of song to cover, but they've made it work. Yeah. Guilty, Beggar's Day, and Love Hurts. Yeah. I would not expect a rock band. Think about Led Zeppelin,
right?
Who have, when they do their covers, and there's a couple of covers on each album, they're taken straight from their blues influences. And Led Zeppelin hard rock it a bit, add some guitar, stick a solo section in there, whatever. You hear the progression. I'm just surprised that the songs they've chosen to cover, they're not wrong. They don't sound out of place. It's just unusual when you hear the original.
Yeah, so because they would pick something that's like soul or early pop stuff, like Love Hurts. If you listen to like Roy Orbison's version of it, if you listen to, I think Emmylou Harris recorded it, and those artists, they have that kind of pop appeal. If you listen to their versions of it, it's like, that's proper radio music. And you wouldn't imagine a hard rock band doing probably their heaviest album to date. You know, at that moment in time, they were doing the heaviest, piece of work, and they choose Love Hurts to finish the album. That is because like you have some bonus tracks and other versions of it, but essentially it's 8 songs and that's the last one. Would you finish a rock album with a ballad? That is, it's just like not the usual choice. Again, they have a style, they have a way of playing things that makes everything make sense together. I think that's the beauty of it.
Well, this is what I was saying.
Again, so just one thing about Guilty. So although it's just kind of soul ballad, as I said, it's about addiction. It's about, he would mention that it's like this. I think one of the first lines there is like, I got some whiskey from a bottle, got some cocaine from a friend, and I had to keep on moving, darling, till I was back in your arms again. So it's not your typical love song.
Yeah, but I mean, although it's a cover, they've chosen it carefully. You're not just going to pick a random song to cover on an album. It has to mean something, and it has to fit the whole feel of the album. And this is what they've done with all of them. I mean, we've already spoke about Guilty and Love Hurts. I mean, Beggar's Day. I listened to the Crazy Horse cover, the original by Crazy Horse, and it's much slower and it's straighter, as in it's straight on the beat. They've shuffled it or they've swung it, and they've given it so much energy. I'm just confused in a really good way at why they've decided to do what they've done with the originals. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't offer a higher compliment. I feel like what I said about the album at the start shows how much I enjoyed it. Yeah. But I'm sat here. I feel like this is good because sometimes our episodes are quite organised. I like that this one already feels a bit chaotic. We're going from song to song, but I feel it fits this episode and this album because there's only 8 songs.
It's chaotic in a way.
Yeah, so with that in mind, I want to continue my thought onto another song. Yeah. When I said I'm confused, Please Don't Judas Me, probably my favourite song on the album. Yeah,
my favourite too.
But it doesn't really change, does it, bro? It's almost 10 minutes of the same kind of chord progression, the same feel. They do fantastic things like I've got my notes. So 6 minutes in, the drums go double time. on a chorus or something. And I'm just sat there on my sixth listen through of this album thinking, I've listened to Please Don't Judas Me 6 times. So in the last 2 days, I've listened to 1 hour's worth of Please Don't Judas Me, and I want more. And I want more, and I'm not bored. And every time I listen, I hear something different, which is what I said about the whole album.
Well,
they just have, sorry, I'll just say quick, just to finish off, they have this fantastic way of adding textures and bringing little, tiny little details in that change a section from 1 minute to another, and then it drops out, and you're like, "Oh my god! Like I've missed that guitar part now. Where did that come from?" It's just brilliant. Especially "Please Don't Judas Me." So yeah, please go on with what
that one. There's something about it for me is, which I just realized thinking of it now, is normally you have like a bass and drums sort of beat that that keeps going for the whole song, and then you can add stuff on top of it.
Yeah.
And the vocal line is what changes. With Please Don't Judas Me, it's almost the opposite.
Yeah.
It's like you have like this mantra being repeated by the singer, and that's the one thing that doesn't change, and everything around it changes for 9 minutes, and it's insane.
But the vocals do change as well, because they get the gospel singers in, and it's like, my god,
but like the melody line.
I get you. Yeah. I'm just saying that even the bass of the song, BASE, it stays the same overall, but they still just find a way to tweak it by adding some harmonies in that you're like, oh my god, it's just brilliant. It feels like a bit of an epic. It feels like a Bohemian Rhapsody. And although the song doesn't change or isn't quirky or unique enough, if you get what I mean, to be in the same category as Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, can I quote Spinal Tap again? It's not it's not an anthem, but it's anthemic.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's fine. Yeah, I'll take that. Yeah, I like that one. But yeah, I mean, that is just fantastic, that song. The guitar sound on Please Don't Judas Me, really cool, kind of progressive. I mean, let's talk about that guitar sound, because as we mentioned at the start, that's a really important feature. I mean, the first track, Hair of the Dog. No, which one is the one it's mainly in? I think that's right, isn't it? Well, he uses it pretty much throughout most of the album, doesn't he? Most songs have a little element of this talk box guitar going on there, and it's just great.
Slide guitar as well.
I mean,
it's slide guitar used in an aggressive way for the heavy songs, and also in a lighter way.
So the one that stood out for me was Rose in the Heather, which is the second. I mean, that's just stunning, man. What a stunning piece of music, Rose in the Heather. I'm almost a little upset at them that they made. I mean, as you can see on my thing, they've called it 5B.
Yeah.
On Spotify, it's called Beggar's Day / Rose in the Heather. Yeah. Give it its own song, man. Make it track number 6, because it's beautiful enough to be its own song. Don't you think?
It was kind of intended to be a coda to Beggar's Day,
right? Okay.
Yeah, I think, but that's the way. I think that's the way
it flows nicely.
Be. But it's such a different piece of music. It's acoustic, it's slow, and Beggar's Day is a shuffle beat, and that's one's more straight, and there's a melodic guitar on top of it, and it's it's super cool.
It's just the synth sounding guitar on it. I thought it was a synth when the guitar comes in at the first time. I thought it was a synth, and you find out it's a guitar because you can hear him slide up to a note and bend the note, and then after that the keys come in, and you're like, wait, I thought they were there at the start, but it was a guitar, and now you're telling me there's keys to listen to. Just brilliant, man.
Well, it's an album clearly produced by a guitar player.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah,
but in a good way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Oh wow!
It's almost like the guitar. The focus of the guitar arrangements is more textures than solos, right? The solos are great, but it's not about it.
We kind of said this about U2 as well, didn't we? Yeah. And that was a quality that The Edge has, is that he uses the guitar more as a rhythmic bass, BASE, as opposed to a lead instrument. And I
love how you always have to spell the word.
I'm a bass player, so I feel like people might think that I'm actually talking about a bass. I just try not to say bass too much in the episode. What was I saying? Although there's lots of lead guitar in this, I don't feel the guitar ever oversteps the mark and becomes wanky, as we like to say.
Yeah,
in place of it being suitable.
Yeah, it's quite balanced, isn't it? With like
Balanced,
enough
yeah.
solos, but not too many, and you
Mm,
have all the effects that make the songs sound unique. You know, so each song's got their own sound
hmm
because of the guitar effects mostly. And the one thing that is well, not only drums and bass are solid throughout the album, but the vocals, I think are we're talking about one
I'm
of my
glad you came
favorite
onto that.
singers. Yeah, because his voice is unmatched by any other singer. Because
Yeah.
you've got like some. It's kind of a shame that you have Dan McCafferty competing with uh, all the iconic singers of the 70s, and because you have Dio, you have Ozzy, you have uh, um, Freddie Mercury, you have like all those guys, and it's like, how could he stand out? But in my opinion, he's as good as all of those guys.
Well, I mean, it's hard to disagree. I heard when on my first listen, I heard through it, and two names stood out to. So I'm not trying to say, oh, Dan McCafferty sounds like these
Yeah,
two because maybe he came before, but because I don't know Dan McCafferty compared to these two, that's my frame of reference. So Dan McCafferty sounded to me Rob Halford from Judas Priest
hmm
mixed with John Fogerty from Creedence.
yeah.
That's the
That
kind
that
of tone I got. But then, in his own way, when he sings those ultra high notes, he has his own distinctive sound there,
it
which
does.
is
It is,
brilliant.
yeah. It's a voice that you recognize straight away. So you hear his voice. Oh, this,
Yeah,
yeah,
and
that's him.
and what it does really, what I found the vocals do really well is it adds a contrast to the music,
Yeah,
because you've got. I'm going off of my interpretation of it sounds quite a lot like Rob Halford. So when I think about Rob Halford's voice on Judas Priest, his screams are so shrill and they're so high pitched and they're so intense that when you hear that metal behind it that Judas Priest is famous for, you're like, right,
yeah,
okay, intense music with intense vocals. But with this, Dan McCafferty's vocals are as intense as Rob Halford's, but the music is much softer rock. It's much bluesier. And so, again, you've got another little oxymoronic contrast there
yeah.
where you're hearing this intense vocals. And I feel like the music should be heavier underneath it. It's not a problem that it's not, but in terms of what I'm used to or what I'm expecting. And when you don't get that, it's not a problem at all, but it's another pleasant surprise on the album, something you don't
Yeah.
really expect to hear.
Yeah, exactly, and yeah, exactly, and it's just like whatever they do, if they playing something soft or loud or aggressive or funny, or his voice always brings character to the song. Like
It
every
makes it
single time,
It
yeah,
makes it
it
a
makes a
Nazareth
Nazareth.
song.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
it's
that's why they could do all the experiments and all, because they would still sound like themselves. You can pick
yeah.
some random covers to put in the album, and it still sounds like Nazareth
Yeah,
because of that one
that,
amazing recognizable vocals. You know.
that's a great shout and a very
Yeah,
important point. You know, we
yeah,
know throughout history how many bands are recognised because of the vocals, and you know Dan
yeah,
McCafferty stands out here.
yeah.
Where do you want to go next?
Well, there's one. So I want to talk about the contrast between the singles, right? We talked about
Okay.
Love Hurts,
Yep.
which is again an unusual way to end an album, which
Yeah.
is a ballad. Now, the song "Hair of the Dog" was covered by Guns N' Roses in their album
Yes.
"Spaghetti Incident." So that's one of it's one of the bands they influenced. But the interesting thing about that song is like they came up with a song. They named I think they wanted to name the album "Son of a
Son of a
Bitch."
bitch. Yeah.
On the label, was like, no fucking way you're gonna release an
No.
album with
Yeah.
that title.
In
And
1975 as
I
well.
just okay, let's find a compromise here. We gotta call it "Hair of the Dog," and they say, okay, that's good enough. And and the lyrics are about this woman who's manipulative and dishonest, and she finds her match. There's a man who says, you know what? Now you're messing with a son of a bitch, so I can be as bad as you.
Yeah.
And it's a cool story. It's not a love story, you know. It's not one of those.
Yeah.
And it's it's not too dark as well. That's the other
Well,
thing. It's
it
just
does have an aggressive overtone to it
yeah,
for the 70s. You know, I think
yeah,
if you think about, you know, Led Zeppelin were obviously singing about, let's call it intense lovemaking in terms of
yeah,
some songs where they go a bit aggressive lyrically. romantically. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah.
sexually? Whereas
Yeah.
this is just like, I'm a son of a bitch. Like, who do you
Yeah.
think you're talking to? So it actually had a bit of
Exactly.
a punch towards it, and you know, for the time, it
Yeah.
was quite unusual. And but the
Well, it was.
song has gone
I.
on to be so famous, isn't it?
It is it's a hell of a song. It's really famous. But the problem with that song, I would think, probably at the time, well, I read that loads of radios refused to play it because of the chorus,
Yeah,
so they didn't want to play. So obviously they found some backlash back in the day. We joke about this. We think that cancel culture is a thing
yeah,
that only happens now. So some of the radios canceled them because they didn't want to have the word bitch played in the radio.
yeah.
So I think it could have been even a bigger. Well, it couldn't actually. It couldn't be bigger if it didn't have any swearing in it, because
The
that's what it
swearing,
is.
yeah,
It's
the
what the
swearing
album
is
is.
the
What the
key. Yeah,
song is.
exactly.
Yeah. So
The
so
just to talk about the popularity of the song, it
yeah,
featured
yeah,
in
yeah.
several movies and TV shows. So, for example, Dazed and Confused, The Fighter, The Expendables were the movies it was in. It was also in Supernatural and That 70s Show, which are the TV series. So, it is one of those iconic rock anthems, you know, that anyone who knows their classic rock will know about.
Yeah. And it has a drum intro, super cool, with a cowbell on the
It
beat.
reminded me of Grand Funk Railroad a bit.
Yeah, we're an American band. That's the
Exactly,
song.
yeah.
It's a very
Yeah.
similar intro with a very similar tempo. I don't know which
Similar
one was
production
done.
as well.
Yeah, which one was recorded first? I don't remember which one was
Ooh,
released first.
let me just have a look. Um, so 73. So America, Grand Funk Railroad were 2 years before.
Yeah, and then you have is it Twisted Sister that has a song with that? We're Not Gonna Take It. Is that the song with the same sort of intro? I'm getting old. My memory fails me sometimes.
Let me just have a look. Yeah, you're right. It's a
Yeah,
lot faster, but
yeah.
it is the
It's the
cowbell there.
same, but
Yeah.
it's like drums and cowbell
But
only for the
Twisted
intro.
Sister have openly come out and said they were
Yeah, yeah,
influenced by Nazareth. So there you
yeah.
go, literally
Yeah,
an influence.
exactly. Well, and that's what you do. You recycle those ideas, isn't
Of
it?
course, yeah, yeah. You put different ideas to them.
That's a version of sampling, isn't it?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So I think it's a good idea to listen to those three songs in a row.
Yeah,
We're an
they're all in
American
the
band,
yeah.
Hair of the Dog, and We're Not Gonna Take It.
There you go, and they're all in the playlist for anyone listening. So, yeah, the Hair of the Dog. Did you want to move on to Love Hurts?
Yeah. Well, Love Hurts. I think we pretty much said everything that has to be said about it. But
I had
I
a
think
few notes. I just wanted to
yeah,
say, what did I say? Well, I mean, right. The Love Hurts is very important because it helped popularize the power ballad
power
going into the
ballad.
80s,
Yeah,
especially among glam metal bands, arena rock bands. When you think of bands like Aerosmith, you know, Scorpions, stuff like that, who are famous for
Scorpions for
having their
me
power ballads.
they are the best ones when it comes to. I think actually Nazareth and Scorpions are the best ones when it comes to power ballads. You know?
Yeah, but Love Hurts played a massive part in popularizing what we now look at as the power ballad, and again, that's something innovative and pioneering that Nazareth are responsible for this album.
Yeah, Love Hurts. When I first listened to it, had such a huge impact on me. It was like, wow, this is heavy in a good way. It's like the beginning of the album makes you want to jump and shout, and the ending of the album makes you want to cry. They just
Yeah.
play with your feelings for like 40 minutes.
Yeah,
It's insane.
that's a great point. That's a great
Yeah.
point. Cool.
Yeah. Right. You know what I've prepared for today by request?
What?
A monologue.
Oh, are we done?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
No, I just wanted. Well, no, I thought. I thought I didn't know if you had another.
When I'm just saying, I have a monologue.
Perfect.
You say whatever you want to say, and I'll finish.
Lovely. I just want to say a few little bits first. The main thing I want to talk about, viewers and listeners who know our show know that I am a metalhead, and so I was really interested when I first heard this and I saw these associations with heavy metal, being this being a little proto heavy metal album, which actually doesn't make sense because heavy metal started in 1970, so you can't have a pre-heavy metal album 5 years after it began. But what we do here is the first examples of when heavy metal moved on from Black Sabbath, because Sabbath ruled the heavy metal landscape between 70 and 75. Deep Purple were doing bits, Uriah Heep were all, there were still very much hard rock bands that were pushing into metal, whereas Sabbath were just out and out metal. I know you like to call them a hard rock band, but I mean, in hindsight, looking back at what they did.
Well, the lyrical themes were darker, so...
Well, yeah, whatever.
So, no, that's what I'm saying. I'm actually on your side here, because of the lyrics, they are more on the heavy metal side.
So after Sabotage in 1975, Sabbath started putting keyboards in their metal, in their music, and which that was like, oh, heavy metal's changing a bit here. Then we got bands like Rainbow, Thin Lizzy, or Judas Priest to an extent, who were beginning to incorporate other things like extended songs, progressive aspects, keyboards, Thin Lizzy, especially the dual lead guitars. And you hear it here as well, man. What song was that? Change in Times. Halfway through, you get these dual lead guitars. And it's still on the talk box, but you can hear there's two of them harmonizing each other. And that's a great example there. Most riffs, I mean, the outro riff to Change in Times as well, just dum 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 dum, proper heavy. And
they have
the
album, singer like changing songs. Some of the songs go double tempo at the end.
Yeah,
I
and
like
it's brilliant.
that vibe, because when you start to get used to what the song is, it becomes something else.
Yeah, exactly. And Miss Misery as well, such a sludgy, heavy riff.
That one, that one brilliant. Reminds me a lot of Black Sabbath.
Yeah,
although
absolutely
it was before that, so they've done it before. It's what like Heaven and Hell by Black Sabbath. The album,
exactly. Like, and it's not close enough to call this a doom metal riff for any metalheads listening, but this might be one of the early examples you get of a slow, sludgy, heavy riff that really feels like it packs a punch. Yeah. And also, Please Don't Judas Me. There's not any example of, that's a cool metal riff. I just mean the extensive length of the song, where tiny aspects change, really goes hand in hand with things like Stargazer by Rainbow, the longer songs by Thin Lizzy, where they were experimenting with different sections. So I just wanted to say that because, like I said to you, on my first listen, I was like, this is just generic rock. After 5, 6, 7 listens, I'm there like, right, now I can see what part this played in moving heavy metal along to the 80s, where we started to see heavy metal blossom.
Yeah.
My God, I mean, so this album has it all.
Yeah, it's like, brilliant. and again, I couldn't think of a more diverse choice of singles for an album. Yeah. Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts. Just the title, say it all.
Do you know? Yeah. No, go on, please.
The same way that Hair of the Dog is a template for hard rock and heavy rock, Love Hurts is a template for power ballads. Yeah. So the same band and the same album has set the standards of what a
You're right,
rock ballad should be like, and what a hard rock song should be like.
Yeah, that's perfect. You've nailed that. One thing I just want to say before we wrap it up is that this album really reminded me of Machine Head by Deep Purple. Just because, not in any way of, that riff sounds like this. It was just how each song, you could almost categorize it as a different genre.
Yeah.
You know how in Machine Head you've got like the second song's really funky. Like you've got songs here where they're playing on some little funk aspects, others are really heavy rock, some are bluesy, but yet it all sounds cohesive and together.
Yeah,
what an album! Really enjoyed it.
I don't know how much of this was intentional, or if it's just like a happy.
Yeah, I almost wish it wasn't intentional. I wish that they just had all these ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. I've just got a few sentences of my thoughts because I want you to finish with the monologue. So, my thoughts on this album: a fantastically unusual rock album. They do the basics so well, and this is what I think touched me most. They do the riffs, the hard rock vocals, the solos, the bluesy feel, but then what they do is they throw in sprinkles of unorthodoxness. The gospel choir, what's that? RITH, the song name. Oh dear. Rose in the Heather. Rose in the Heather instrumental. The cover of a country singer. The cover of a doo-wop Everly Brothers song. This is what makes the album stand out for me. Almost every song has something completely unique hidden somewhere in it, which is a pleasant surprise for every new time you listen to it. This is so much more than your generic run-of-the-mill 1970s rock album, and it's easy to see why it is held in such high renown. So, bro, a massive thanks for choosing this one, because this is one that I have come out going, I really enjoyed this.
I knew you would like this
Yeah,
one,
it's
man.
brilliant.
Like,
It's
I think
brilliant.
because it relates to so many bands that you like.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
excellent.
and we've made this comparison with loads of bands from the same era of rock and roll. So that's and I think it's inevitable to do that because
Hmm.
it's just like they are not as popular as some of those guys, but
Yeah.
they deserved to be, in my opinion.
It's a shame when I hear this
Yeah,
album, I kind of think, oh, how did they not get up there in the upper
yeah.
echelons of
It
Zeppelin, Deep Purple, you know?
it did sell well. There's one two
Yeah.
million copies worldwide, which is pretty good. Like about 1 million in America alone.
Well, it was a big success in the US, and
Yeah,
that was actually helped, as you mentioned, by the singles. Because I
yeah,
think, imagine you've got two so different singles
yeah,
that audiences are going to maybe like one but not like the other, and vice versa. But
yeah,
they're both going to go out and buy the album in case there's any
yeah.
more songs like these on there. And there is Guilty's a
There
bit like
is.
Love Hurts, and then
Yeah,
half of the album's a bit like Hair of the Dog. So there's something for everyone, man. It's awesome.
there is something for everyone. Well
Yeah,
said, and it's just
excellent.
the right length as well. I'm not a big fan of the extended versions where the label just adds a lot of like live at BBC, whatever. Super cool, but in the end of the day, I like to listen to an album with the
How they
length
intended
it
it.
was actually. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how the band
What
intended.
just before we finish,
Yeah.
what were your thoughts on the other three songs? So I know we've touched on My White
Yeah,
Bicycle, but
no,
Holy
but
Roller and Railroad Boy?
those songs were in they are from other albums, aren't they? I
I
think they
don't
are
know.
another. Yeah, they are.
Okay, so they're not from this period.
Yeah, so I don't know
Okay,
why they
that's
there.
fine.
So, yeah, but they're great songs
Cool.
as well. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, do you want to finish us off with your monologue?
Yes, I do have.
Go
Yeah, I
for
do
it.
have a few words to say about it. So here it comes.
Da, 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 da.
It's a rare situation where I do the monologue
Yeah.
at the end. So yeah. Bear with me. I'm not used to this. Here we go. British rock has conquered the world in the 60s and it has consolidated its reputation during the 70s. Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Led Zeppelin, The Who, Queen, and many others gave us the most epic songs and iconic riffs ever created and turned rock music into a culture that remained strong throughout the years. Considering this context, it's easy to overlook and forget some of the greatest bands that helped shaping heavy rock into what it is today. On top of that list, in my opinion, is Nazareth, all the way from Scotland, with their raw rock sound and one of the most amazing singers of their generation. After after 5 solid albums, Nazareth took their hard rock to another level, sounding heavier, darker, and more aggressive than ever, but also capable of delivering emotional ballads with more power than any other band. Who else could open an album shouting "son of a bitch" and end with "love hurts" without ever dropping the ball? 8 tracks with great musicianship, creativity, and clever production. Backing vocals, keyboards, and percussion never get in the way of guitar, drums, and bass. So even with sophisticated arrangements, the album still delivers what true rock fans would expect from a 70s band. Hair of the Dog is the best-selling album by one of the most prolific and yet underrated bands of the 70s. It's got everything a classic album needs, or maybe they could have used more cowbell.
Amazing, man. Absolutely amazing. And I agree with everything you've said. This if you've been watching this on YouTube, you'll see I'm smiling the whole episode because for me, this has been one of my favorite episodes because this is what this show is about. I'm just as happy to talk about Physical Graffiti and other Machine Head by Deep Purple, all these big famous albums. I love talking about them, but this is what the show's about: uncovering hidden gems that played their part but just didn't quite make it to the top of for whatever reason, didn't quite make it to the top of the famous albums list. But my God,
they
it deserves
were like
to be so.
huge at the time, but people seem to forget about
Yeah.
some of those bands, isn't it?
Anyway, fantastic. Any more thoughts?
Yeah.
All good.
Well, I'm really glad we're doing this episode today because I think that's how we started all of this, and recommending albums. So that's my recommendation to you, and I'm glad you liked it.
There you go. Well,
and I hope you guys, if you're not familiar with the album, have a listen and enjoy.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. If you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, we'd ask a favour, scroll down, give us a rating, write a few words about us, and it helps us, as long as it's a good rating, helps us move up the charts and be seen by more people. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to hit subscribe and like the video so you stay up to date with our latest content. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, give us the 5 stars and all that stuff on the internet. Help us to, find our way to the top. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
And as usual, take care, guys, and long live rock and roll.